Hi, and welcome to A Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. My guest today is one I'm going to describe as the funniest meditation teacher you'll find. His name is David Gandelman, and he is a teacher and author whose mission is to awaken souls on their path to growing into being human and living an enlightened, purpose-driven life. David is the founder of the Meditation School app and host of the Meditation School Energy Matters and Grounded Sleep podcasts. His book, The 7 Energies of the Soul, was released on February 22nd, 2022, which was just last week. His meditations have been streamed millions of times. He has taught at Cornell University, NBC Universal, SAP, and numerous other organizations. David holds a bachelor's degree in Western philosophy from Rutgers University, which he combined with his studies in Eastern spiritual traditions living in the Himalayas, and he spent 7 years in Hawaii as the director of a school for intuitive development and mysticism. David informs a teaching style that connects energetic experience, ancient wisdom traditions, and humor in order to create a safe atmosphere for people interested in learning to meditate and develop into their potential. David, I can't even tell you how happy I am to talk with you today. Thank you for joining me.
Susan, it's my pleasure. And I did all that stuff. Geez, who wrote that bio?
You did. And there is much, much more to come, I know, because you got started very early along this path. And I want you to talk about that. So that actually is a good starting point, David. Can you tell us your background in pursuing the path of meditation and also the inspiration for writing your recent book, The 7 Energies of the Soul?
Sure. Well, like you, I'm from New Jersey. And so I grew up in the suburbs, just maybe like 15 minutes outside of Manhattan. Regular kid playing sports and chasing girls and having no real sense of a bigger, wider purpose. I think I would say might call it like matching the energy, the mindset of everybody around me. And I thought I'd grow up to work in finance or law or something, make my Jewish parents happy. That's what you do, right? And then one day I picked up a book on meditation, The Power of Now, and something just deeply shifted in me. I was just never the same person. I just started meditating a lot, went and got a degree in philosophy, moved to the Himalayas, like you do, from New Jersey at 23 years old, and I just started studying spirituality pretty deeply. And that's how I kind of launched on my path. And when I started, I had no idea that it would turn into a career path. I just knew that that's what I was really passionate about. And luckily for me, technology kind of caught up right as I was maybe coming of age, ready to start teaching. And so, podcasting and YouTube and all the things, all the avenues started opening up. I feel like I had great timing on that side of things. I rode a wave of mindfulness that was coming into being, and I was a little bit early, I would say. Like when I started teaching, it was less welcome, and then maybe like 5 years into it, all of a sudden it was the cool thing. Mindfulness got really cool, spirituality got really cool, and then eventually I moved to Los Angeles. I lived there for about 2 years, which was more than enough. I love LA, no hate against LA, but it was enough for me. And it was like spiritual Disneyland, everybody was interested in personal growth, development, spirituality. I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. I had been so secluded for so long, living in Hawaii on the island. And so I realized there was this big movement and wave of people interested in this work. And now I get to be teaching it and traveling, and I happen to be in Mexico right now, so that's pretty cool. But we'll stick to English for this interview because my Spanish kind of sucks still.
I appreciate that. My Spanish is non-existent, David. So it is. To me, it sounds like not only a cool life and lifestyle. What you said about riding that wave of mindfulness, we're here talking about this, and that alone shows you that this is quote unquote mainstream now. And not only that, it's been very unusual, difficult times, putting it mildly. That's an understatement, right? And even now this week, we'll talk about that. So that said, I think it's important to differentiate between mindfulness and meditation. And I would love your take on that. And, just tell listeners about mindfulness practices versus meditation. You teach both, and even energy work. So yeah, there you.
Sure. One of my favorite teachers, Eckhart Tolle, he doesn't like the word mindfulness because he always says he wants your mind to be empty instead of full. So I get that. I don't. It's not a word that I use that much either. But I guess maybe a good definition of mindfulness is bringing awareness to whatever it is that you're doing in your life. So you can mindfully eat, you can mindfully walk, be in a mindful relationship, at work, all of the above. So I understand that. Yeah, I get. Yeah, the word is mindful when we want it mind emptiness, but that sounds weird. So and then I guess meditation would be more the traditional practice of closing your eyes. And for me, a good definition would be bridging the conscious and the unconscious minds. So maybe a very tiny percentage of our mind is aware and conscious, and we're sitting at the tip of the spear of an ocean of unconsciousness. And maybe that unconscious mind is connected to some universal unconscious mind. And a lot of our answers, a lot of our deepest fears and desires, past traumas, all live in that ocean of unconsciousness. And as we start meditating, things will pop up out of that space. And we get to heal it, deal with it, reconcile it, let it teach us. I think we forget we're kind of swimming in a vast ocean, mostly just on the surface. And the surface of most water is a little choppy at times, right? So being on the surface of your awareness, it's like, the wind of people's emotions is blowing towards you, and the wind of their expectations, and sometimes a lightning strike of anger from somebody. And you're like, this is a choppy experience. And when we go deeper in meditation, maybe we find that deep, still space that you might experience while you're scuba diving. Kind of look around the unconscious, go, wow, there's a lot of shiny objects here. And if we can stay conscious and step into the unconscious mind, I think that we can really reconcile a lot in ourselves that holds us back and holds us down, creates limiting beliefs, and we could free ourselves from a lot of negativity and pain. And then we might unlock a deep sense of creativity and power that's been sitting down there and we haven't even been aware of it. There's this like a story from, I think I heard it in India, of this beggar sitting for 20 years on a box on the street, just begging for money, always believing he was super poor. And then somebody coming by and going, hey, what is that you're sitting on? And he goes, it's just a box. And then he removes it and he's sitting on a pile of gold. I think that's a kind of an analogy to what we're all doing, kind of searching and searching and searching on the outside. And we have an ocean inside of us full of our answers that we're just unaware of. So for me, meditation is the conscious practice and waking up to all of that's inside of us that we're unconscious of. And for a lot of folks, if you're listening to this, if you ever fall asleep meditating or you hit some energy when you're meditating and all of a sudden you just start passing out or things get fuzzy, that might be you starting to touch the unconscious and then it making you go unconscious versus you waking it up. So that happens to a lot of people. They go to meditate, they just pass out, right? Our goal is to stay awake. And in Zen, I stayed at a Zen center once in India for a while, and the teacher would come smack us with a stick on the shoulder. It would be like, wake up. Because it's so easy to go out. And we might go unconscious to patterns. We go unconscious to our own beliefs. We go unconscious to our own biases, our own filters, our own pain. So it's not just a physical unconscious, that's an expression of it, but it's also just this kind of awareness. It's almost like, I'm not aware that triggers me. And then when somebody triggers me, I go unconscious to a certain extent. Maybe I don't fall asleep, but I start screaming or I get self-defensive or I coil, and hide, run away. So there's other kinds of going unconscious. It's not just either on or off as a light switch. It's a whole spectrum. And so someone who's maybe quote unquote enlightened, maybe they're all the way kind of aware and nothing is knocking them unconscious to different levels. I had a professor in college, Eastern religions professor, who drew a beautiful this big line across the chalkboard. It's like 300 people in the room, and on one side he wrote enlightenment, and on the other side he wrote suicide. And he said most of us oscillate from one side to the other, and we're in the middle. We don't want to be here, and the extreme of that is suicide, like get me off this planet, I'm done. Or I'm totally accepting of being here and in this moment, and that would be the enlightened end of the spectrum. And we mostly as humans, we oscillate like, oh, I hate this. Oh, this is good. Oh, I hate this. Oh, this is okay. And really meditating helps us find a sense of acceptance and neutrality. And then that in and of itself awakens something in us. Most people, they're chasing pleasure and running from pain, right? Their whole lives. And this is a weird example, but I've seen some wealthy people do this even more when they like part of the attraction of wealth is to avoid pain. So I don't want to wait in line at the store. I'll have my food delivered. I'm not going to go through security at the airport. I'm flying private. I don't want to use my energy cooking. I have a chef, right? And it's all great on the surface, but it can turn into this endless running away from pain. Oh my God, this hotel, the bed sheets are the wrong color. I've heard incredible examples of wealthy people going, why the F are those towels purple? They should be blue. It's like any little thing, right? Like, and if you live that way of running from pain towards pleasure all the time, you're going to end up causing, ironically, a lot of pain. Yeah. So in meditation, we accept both and we work through them in let's say a mindful way, if we can use that word.
It's okay to use it. It's not a bad word. Just listening to you, I never thought of it about that avoiding pain, but then you're not experiencing life, right. So you're removing a lot of what I would think of as key life learning experiences and just being engaged and connected back to that being present, being in the here and now. And you know what? We all need to ride the waves of life and not avoid, because ultimately that does end up in pain. I totally agree. Which, so your book, David, that just came out that I have here in hand, and the 7 energies of the soul right here, literally. I love it. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because that's the crux of your book. Along the way, somewhere you discovered or came up with, I guess, in a meditation or a dream or something, the 7 archetypal energies. And I really want you to talk about that and just, finding balance. And I think that that's honestly what it comes down to for most of us in our daily lives, right? Is balancing the inner and outer worlds. Yeah.
So, well, first of all, let me just start by saying there's this quote, good artists steal, and politicians lie to cover up the truth, and artists lie to tell the truth. V for Vendetta, the movie. That's where I heard that.
I never saw that. Now I'm going to have to.
Fantastic. Anyway, I stole these words. I've had teachers use different archetypes in my life, but all I did was kind of put them in a structure that works for me, and I think works for my students based on all of their questions over the years. Thousands of students, one-on-one clients just coming to me with the same issues. I kind of took those issues, turned them into archetypes. So for sure, I meditated on this a lot. Was looking at, what's the right structure for me, and what package can we put it in here to help people navigate the world. It's just like a map. It's by no means the right way to do it. People argue, are there 5 chakras or 7 or 10 or 13? I think that's the wrong question. Is this map useful? And so for me, I just created a map that is useful for me and hopefully my students to navigate their inner world. And so if somebody says, I'm having a really hard time with my business, I feel like I can't get out of bed or off the couch to get work done, I would say they're having a deficient creator energy manifesting in them. Or if somebody comes to me and says, I'm a workaholic, I never stop, I work to avoid my relationships, I would call them an excessive creator. Or if somebody says, David, I'm always absorbing everyone else's pain around me, I would call them an excessive healer. Or if somebody says, David, I have no boundaries with my family, I would call them maybe an excessive lover. Or somebody who says, I don't need a partner or relationships, I'm perfectly happy alone, but behind their eyes, I see all that pain, I would call them a deficient lover. And so with each energy, we can kind of shrink into deficiency, or maybe we expand too much in some form with our energy, our effort into excess. And yes, finding balance with every space in our lives and weaving them together and not maybe overly identifying with one role. So somebody who's maybe a mother maybe can over identify with being a mother, or somebody whose role is to always be the good husband could over identify with being the good husband, or the parent, or the CEO, or the spiritual teacher, right? I'm always the spiritual teacher. I went to a party once and I met somebody. Within the first 30 seconds of meeting them, they lectured me for like 10 minutes about what the universe was all about. And that's to me excessive master energy, teacher energy. Like, I don't know you. You don't need to lecture me about the nature of the universe. I didn't ask, but you could tell they didn't know how to turn the faucet off and manage that part of themselves. So when you're at a gathering, at a party, or some kind of gathering, maybe the appropriate thing would be to connect one-on-one as human beings instead of I'm your teacher, I'm everyone's teacher, I'm going to just lecture at you, right? So to me, that was an excessive master energy. And I'm sure I used to be guilty of that. Now I'm guilty of the opposite. To get me to talk about it, you have to hit record on the podcast or being in a class. Otherwise, it's like pulling teeth out of me. It's just not a conversation that I have in a social setting. So finding balance in all seven: the creator, the healer, the warrior, the lover, the artist, the explorer, and the master energies. And becoming aware that you don't need to pigeonhole yourself into one or all, and all your self-value isn't just from one. Maybe you've been getting it from one or two because that's where people think you have value. But the truth might be you do have an inner artist or an inner explorer or an inner lover that hasn't fully come to fruition and manifested into form. And then the question is, all right, how do I manifest all of these energies into form and balance them? And I think it's like a good meal, just the right recipe of each one at any given moment, and recognizing you're all of them and you're beyond all of them, rather than maybe like in astrology or Enneagram or numerology, you're like, you're this type. And yes, you might have dominant types and you might lean into some. Sure. I have a quiz. It's free to find out which ones you kind of lean into the most. But at the end of the day, I think our happiness is derived from the balance of all of them and the fulfillment of all of them.
Mm-hmm. Again, back to balance. Balance to me is the goal. I love hearing this. I'm just listening the whole time, and little things are going off in my head. How in the book, I love that meal analogy and the cooking and recipe, how, that's very fitting, but you talk about an orchestra analogy, I think, in your book. And then you just talked about faucets, turning on some, and I could see each of those archetypes as being its own individual faucet and coming into, or at least control. And, sometimes we have to increase some, decrease others. So just all this self-awareness, I think that's, what people are wanting to work on a daily basis. Well, at least I hope so. I think too many people are not self-aware.
Well, what I do for them then is that's why usually these things start as quote unquote problems. I'm having a hard time in my relationship space is what I'll hear. So, all right, you're developing your inner lover. I'm stuck with my finances. Okay, you're developing your inner creator. So when we can kind of flip it right side up and realize it's not a problem, it's part of my soul that's growing into this human form and trying to manifest something special and beautiful. So, rather than going, I don't have enough money, well, what does your creator look like when you are in abundance and really grounded and balanced and on your path, versus who should I blame for why I don't have enough money, or whatever the issue happens to be. And then just going back to the analogies, perhaps my favorite analogy for the seven energies is like white light passing through a prism and then refracting into the seven main colors of the rainbow. If somebody lives a very one-dimensional life, like they're just an overworker, there's nothing else going on, they just work, 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 then their life can become or seem very gray or black and white. They're not bringing the full spectrum of life. And then obviously the richness comes when we combine all of these energies, right? When you're a lover, an artist, and a master all combined, and all these new colors come about. So that's my favorite analogy. There's a light of awareness in us. It has to pass through a human form, and then that form creates more forms, and those forms, come out in each area of our lives. And I think that's kind of the tapestry we're all trying to weave, the artwork of our life that we're here to create. How beautiful would it be to be a lover first thing in the morning, and a healer by brunch, and an artist by the afternoon, and an explorer, each of those. And someone might go, that sounds like someone who's wealthy gets to do that. I have to spend 80% of my time working to survive. I don't have those abilities to do all that, David. And okay, well, then you got a deficient creator energy that's clearly in survival. Then that's where we need to work at first. And I went through that. I was poor when I started as a teacher. And I was always like, oh, it's so hard. And I had to work my ass off, reading every book I could and watching every YouTube video on entrepreneurship, and, until I worked it out. And that was a huge part of my path. And then the next part of my path became teaching people. Like, I love helping people with their business stuff. I have a free money course, so I'm not charging you for my money course. It's totally free. And if you go, it's just download the Medical app. And so I love teaching and sharing how to get out of that energy and grow. So it turned into my artist energy, my lover, my master energy. It got out of just the creator. So you can shift for sure. I think I'm a living example of shifting. I told my friend this morning, me and him were having breakfast, and I said, I used to be like a level 9 moron. I've gotten down to like a 5, and that 10 years of progress has been amazing.
Hilarious. That just took me out of my train of thought. I do want to say, though, David, I mentioned it in my intro for a reason. I have the meditation school app. I love listening to it in your meditations, and you crack me up. I think we all need to lighten up. And in general, like, there's so much heaviness in the world. But made a little note to myself about, I really feel that your work helps us lighten up in these seemingly dark times. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I, as you, love teaching people and really showing them how, or helping them create a vision of, let's say, a more positive life or a healthier future and self and all of that. And they have to experience it on their own, but let's give them some tools and resources, is my feeling, because people need to build resilience. They need to get through the day-to-day. Now we have the war going on in, Ukraine. And so can you give listeners maybe even a little bit more of your roadmap or insight, experience to help them navigate these difficult times?
Yeah, and let me just preface by saying we were in the beginning stages of redesigning the app, and my team in Ukraine is busy literally physically fighting. Yeah, I mean, a bunch of computer programmers in the street now holding weapons, protecting their homes. They've been sending me pictures. They update me.
Yeah, think of that, right?
Yeah. They've been updating me constantly, email me, letting me know how it's going. So, sending them lots of good healing energy, nice big golden protection bubble around all of them. So that is reality for sure. And so they're going through a very intense survival energy right now. And what energy do they need to survive? They're warrior, which is not something we've actually talked about yet, right? So perhaps the Russian president is a very excessive warrior energy and probably has a very deficient lover. Every let's say dictator or intense leader in the world in history always has a deficient lover energy and excess warrior energy, and that leads to the greatest amount of pain for everybody, right? Or if they're really greedy, maybe there's some of that excessive creator energy as well. Who knows? I want to take and own everything, right? Or I know the best. I'm connected to God. Excessive master energy. I'm the religious figure of this country, and I know all. Ugh. So,
we both
yeah, okay, all right. There's a guy who's who's an excessive warrior and a deficient lover. He's causing chaos, and so to balance that out, the people he's fighting in Ukraine, they're having to step up their warrior energy, but to win, they have to step up their lover energy as well. You can't fight a deficient lover with deficient lover energy. I think the reason the Ukrainians, in some sense, at least in our hearts and minds, are winning is because their president holds a certain kind of energy that we all can see and appreciate. And that's kind of rare in a leader. And so I think we all have goosebumps about that and feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard not to. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, how do I show up for this in my energy? What can I do? So me, I wouldn't make a very good warrior. If I would, I would be a waste of space. So, donate money, raise money. I've been doing some free meditations on healing
Your
during
world
times of
peace
war.
meditation. I did it this week. That was beautiful.
Oh, good. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, really lovely to have. I'll try to do another one to have everyone show up for those.
It's nice.
And yeah, so for me, I'm always looking at how do I contribute? How can I show up? I have a nonprofit called the Himalayan Children's Future Fund, where we raise money for orphanages in Nepal. And so that's another way that I like to help. So we all have our angles and our energy, how it wants to move. Anyway, that was a side note about Ukraine. The question was about like real specific tools that people can
Tools for
use in their
resilience.
practice.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. So, it depends. I would say about 80% of my students come through the door of anxiety and stress, or lack of sleep. I would easily say 80% come through one of those three doors and help me with this, David. And that's cool. That's legitimate. And so if that's the deal, then the real question is, where does my anxiety come from? So if I sit and I close my eyes to meditate, this often happens. David, I tried to do your meditation. My mind doesn't stop. I'm bad at meditating. I always hear that. I'm a terrible meditator.
So many
And
people.
that's just,
hilarious.
yeah. That would be like saying I'm sitting in the water and there's ripples on the top of the water and I can't stop them, David. Your meditation doesn't work. I can't psychically force the water ripples to stop. So I'm like, oh, you're going about it in the wrong way. You're confused about what you think this is about. So your job is not to stop the ripples on the surface of the water, or your fluctuations of your thoughts. It's maybe to recognize the stillness underneath those ripples. They can, and then maybe they'll stop for a moment or for a day, or maybe they will rage, but underneath that rage, you'll be at peace. So it's learning to not identify so much with those ripples of thought and sense that peace underneath them. Every sound comes out of silence, and every thought comes out of a space of stillness, right? Otherwise, it couldn't exist. If we didn't know silence, we couldn't know sound. There's a difference. So when you recognize that, same with movement and stillness. So when you sit to meditate, you're not stopping the thoughts, you're recognizing they're coming out of an emptiness and going back in. And if you can, it's maybe a good analogy is you're sitting in a room, and when I say, describe to me what's in the room, you say computer, bed, chairs, walls, dream catcher. I got a dream catcher over here. Nobody says space, but the room is like 95% space. It's actually 100% space with objects in the space, right? It's the most accurate way to describe it. So there's a space inside you that all of these thoughts are taking form. So when you sit to meditate, if you can focus more on the space and less on the content, that's when a shift in the beginning of stages of meditation, it really happens for people. And then the next stage is, but now I'm frustrated. Now, not only do I notice random thoughts, now I notice frustrating, resisting thoughts, David. This is worse. That means you've taken a step. That's good. Yes. So can I let the resistant thoughts, the frustrating thoughts, I'm bored thoughts, can I let those ripples pass through the space and be still and accepting? the anxious thoughts, which is where we started, the stress, the stuff that's keeping me awake. Can I sit with that? And then when I can, all of a sudden something underneath that stress and anxiety will reveal itself. You'll realize, oh, it wasn't about how much time I have today. It's about, some pain from 5 years ago. And now we're getting to the next level of like, oh shit, there's a real memory here that's charged with pain. Now what do I do, David? Call your therapist. That could be part of the solution.
Right.
Coach, healer, guide, therapist. When we get to the real big stuff and we're not able to sit still with it and we need someone to help us heal and reflect, 100%, I'm 100% in favor of having a team of pros around us, free ones, paid ones, whatever is in your abilities to afford, all of the above to help. So that's a given. But if you are meditating, sitting with this next level of energy and pain, then it starts turning into images like memories. And that's when we have to awaken that mind's eye. So we have two eyes to see out, one eye to see in. Close the physical eyes, the inner eye opens, and then we have what's called insight. When we have insight, oh, there's that memory. It's like a charged particle. It's charged with pain and anger and resentment. I could see it. Maybe it has colors and a shape. And we learn how to get neutral to whatever that is and sit with it and start to accept the resistance. And then all of a sudden, if we can do that long enough, for me, sometimes it's like a staring contest. If there's something really bothering me, either it wins or I win, right? And it's like I'm going to torture you until you get up and try to override me with food or Netflix or overworking. And I'm like, nope, I'm just going to sit here and be still and love you. I'm going to love the shit out of you until you can't take it and you reveal what you're trying to hide. And then usually it's another layer of pain, or I don't love myself or believe in myself. Something deep comes out, and that's where the diamond is. Now we've gotten somewhere. Holy shit, I haven't loved myself since I was 17. And that moment of awareness, that shift, you're something heavy in your energy that's been weighing you down, pulling you down into the bottom of the ocean by your ankles, it lifts. And now you're above water and you're aware but you're aware of what's been keeping you unconscious to your pattern and your pain and why you're not, having the love you need or whatever it is. And that's how we transform from the inside out. So if somebody says to me, David, I've been working on this for 10 years. It hasn't gone away. I've tried. I'm like, all I hear in your voice is pure resistance.
Yeah.
You have not worked through the resistance. Maybe they spent 10 years blaming people and trying to deconstruct with their therapist who to blame and why, but they haven't really worked through it yet and found a sense of neutrality. If they have, the proof would be in the pudding. The proof is always in the pudding. So I don't care if someone comes to me and says, I'm a monk from Tibet. I'm the 14th, 17th generation of this lineage, and I'm pure enlightenment. And then they're a jerk. I'm like, no, you're
Clearly
not.
You're not enlightened.
You're not. Yeah, the milk is sour, my friend. The proof is in the pudding, and you suck. So
and that does happen. That's real. We all have those experiences, encounter people like that. Exactly. Well, I want to say for that person, if they're listening, rewind, listen to what you just said over the last probably 3 to 5 minutes, because that was really tremendous. There's so much in listening to you that I think people really, you're listening and then you're like, and I got to go back and re-listen, because that, in my opinion, is why meditation is for everyone and so beneficial. And that's the goal, right? Like everything you said is like, because it's hard work and it's okay to pull the Band-Aid. That's not only okay, it's so necessary to work through that pain. And it's so uncomfortable for most people that they just get that resistance, stops them from continuing.
And if I could just add, there's a physical resistance too. Sometimes it's like, oh, my shoulder is itching, or there's pain, I can't sit anymore. That's usually not true. It's something deeper is trying to convince you to move. Unless it's like a real injury, it's okay to sit through that discomfort. And let me also just add, there's so many like visual tools and other tools that I do teach, but at the end of the day, it doesn't so much matter. When you see an animal being born, I just saw this amazing comedian, Elijah Schlesinger. Do you know her? She's one of the funniest comedians out there these days. Saw her a couple weeks ago live in Denver, and she said, human beings, when we're born, it takes months, years. You're living with your parents till you're 35, and you're still not an adult. When a giraffe has a baby, it's like, boop, drop 10 feet to the ground, run away. And so there's an innate wisdom in us when we close our eyes that knows how to see, just like with our physical eyes. You don't have to learn to see, right? You just see or feel or smell or touch. We have other senses. They're just dormant. We don't give them enough attention. So when we meditate, go, but David, how do I see? You don't have to go digging into your past. You just sit still. Things arise, and you orient your awareness behind your eyes into the center of your head, kind of the seat of your consciousness, your conscious experience. I think we'd all agree that the seat of our experience is in the center of our head, behind our eyes, but our identity is in the center of our chest. If I say point to yourself, you would put your hand on your heart, right? So spiritually speaking, our center of gravity is in the center of our chest, but our experience is mostly behind our eyes. And so when we just orient ourselves into the right areas, whether it's heart or mind, you start to know how to see and experience. It's already in you. So yes, I could teach you 1,000 tools, and they may be super helpful. And at the same time, the Buddha didn't have any tools, right? It's the founder of, something always has to, discover it. And so you're your own Buddha. Why is some statue of a guy who's been dead a few thousand years no more than you? You have this innate wisdom. So when you go to meditate, it will start to unfold. So just be still and be accepting of who you are. And then I think the most important thing is be as honest as possible with yourself when you go to meditate about how you feel, and the rest will unfold.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I was thinking, as you're saying, that people have to be okay to be with themselves. And that, I think, is the number one tool going away.
Yes.
To sit and be with yourself. Isn't that,
and let the layers, let the layers of who you are not start to peel off, like your family's expectations, your work, all the people around you that have put little post-it notes of you're not good enough, you don't know who you are, you're not wealthy enough, all those invalidating post-it notes that people energetically place on us. You have to peel those off, maybe sometimes one by the thousands. Mm-hmm. until you find who you really are. So there's like a deconstructing, but then there may also be like a kind of reconstructing or growing into. It's not enough to take away. We also have to find wisdom and then develop into who we're becoming. So there's like a physical kind of puberty we go through that's very uncomfortable and awkward. And then there's a spiritual one as adults we also have to go through that could be very uncomfortable and awkward, where we realize I'm not who I thought I was. I'm not my past. I'm not everybody else's judgments. And to grow through caring what others think and about who you are is not the easiest task. If I get a negative comment, I still like, oh, ouch. Oh, no. I'm waiting for my first negative Amazon review on the book. It's only been like a week. So I know it's coming. I'm going to be like, don't read it. Don't read it, David. Don't read it.
Don't read it. Block it out, David. I'm sending that gold protective energy bubble to protect you from any negative reviews. But
it'll be good for me. I think if you don't have people that dislike you, you're doing something wrong. And if you don't have if you don't have anybody that likes you, you're also doing something wrong. If everybody hates you, you're probably doing something wrong. And if everybody loves you, you're probably doing something wrong. So I think a natural somewhere in the middle is probably a bit healthier. So bring on the negative reviews. I got this.
You've definitely got this. I agree. And then you've come to that place of balance that we all seek. At least I hope so. So I have some other just thoughts, I guess, more so than questions, because you're full of just so much insight on this. Back to what inspired you originally, Eckhart Tolle, and being in the now. What's his book? The
Power of Now.
Power of Now. Thank you. And that's really hard for everybody, for most of us to be. We only have the here and now, right? However, I have to bring up a quote from Gandhi, who said, "The future depends on what you do today." And so I want to tie this back to why and how we can work on the here and now with meditation, and what all the work you do helps us in this moment to create a better future, wouldn't you say, for all collectively, not just individually. I believe, in, maybe I'm a little idealistic, in a brighter, healthier, more loving future for all of us through meditation.
Yes. So, well, let me start by just saying, like, I actually really enjoy financial investing. I find it like a puzzle and fun. So that's very future based.
Yes. Yeah.
So whatever, or if you're planning a trip or your day, whatever it is, you can plan for the future from the present, or you can be totally unconscious and just project yourself out there, and you kind of leave your body. So there's what you do with your presence is entirely up to you. You can reconcile the past from the present, and you can plan the future from the present, and you'll do a much better job if you're present. So if you're unconsciously just going through memories, replaying them over and over, that's getting you nowhere. You're dragged into the past. But if you're sitting with a traumatic moment from the past and being present with it, that's a whole different thing. So I think there's a misinterpretation of what it means to be in the present. It doesn't mean you're jet skiing or skydiving all the time. That's like something that forces you into a very physical sensation of the present, but it's more than that. And a good way to be present is, yes, the body can never be in the future or in the past. So if your mind projects into the future and your body can't go, the gap between the future and where your body is in the moment is what causes stress and anxiety. The wider the gap, the more stress and the more anxiety. So you want to reel yourself in back into your body, find those physical sensations in the breath that'll anchor you into the moment. And then you could plan the future from the present. So I don't think there's necessarily a contradiction there by any means. You can live a fruitful life, invest your money, plan for the future, have your babies, whatever it is.
Exactly.
From
Save for your
moment.
kids' college. I would highly advise that.
And at a very
retirement.
Exactly, at an experiential, subjective level, there is nothing but this moment. Every moment you've ever experienced in your life has been this moment. So you can't get out of it. You project out and you think you're away, but some part of you're always here. So recognizing that, and as we started the podcast with that, enlightenment to suicide. Enlightenment is accepting being here, and suicide is I cannot be here. The pure resistance to this moment the way it is. And if you can overcome that resistance and transform through it, that's going to be your own version of enlightenment. So part of that might be healing through trauma that keeps getting triggered every time you try to be present. So whatever that challenge is for you, I would take it. Whatever you think your problems are, that's what your path is. And wherever your resistance is, that's what your path is. And using presence to help you intuitively guide you, let's say, on that path. I think that's where all the good juice is. That's where the work is. Yeah.
Sure is. Well, I have to pull up what I learned from you about enlightenment this week, David. You're going to laugh. So I said that I did listen to your meditation for, I think it was the World Peace one, where you did say that enlightenment is total love and compassion, and it is all about accepting all of our imperfections. So I just am, if you didn't know that, it had a profound effect on me in that moment as I was listening to it. I'm like, that's it. It is. It's all about taking people from that suicide. And I hope that's what we're doing. And the goal is to inspire and empower people with this podcast, but bringing them from that, if not necessarily suicidal, but that, negative place towards the enlightenment of self-acceptance. And,
let's say the resistance towards what's in the moment for us. Yeah. So, and just to rephrase the enlightenment part again, for me, it's like enlightenment is not a move to perfection. It's the acceptance of our imperfection. Exactly. So I think that's that's the confusion for most people. I'm going to be the best version of myself and reach perfect one day. That is a form of resistance in itself to who I am right now and what this moment is. And that's what's causing all of the friction and all of the pain. Once you're here and present and you can accept who you are, then you can change. But everybody always wants the answer and the shiny object at the end without the rest. And so maybe just possibly you can consider that your enlightenment is the acceptance of your imperfections rather than trying to overcome them. And then maybe some of those like more difficult parts of your personality, beliefs, maybe they start to iron out once you have more of that acceptance. It's a little bit of a paradox, is that when you stop trying to change and become something different, that's when the change maybe starts to occur.
Oh, I do believe that. And then finding that inner treasure, that I picture, you started out the podcast saying that, but I pictured this glowing light within me, and that's beautiful. Thank you. This inner treasure.
I've looked under my chair a lot. There's never any money, but I'll keep looking. One day I check under every chair,
Hey, you never know. Life is full of surprises and miracles. So I'm all stay open, right? So David, this has been fabulous. Can I ask one final question of you today? And that is, what is one thing you're grateful for at this moment?
That's a great question. For me, I'm grateful for the human beings around me, what I would quote unquote call my team, and the teams that I'm on for other people. I'm kind of grateful for both dynamics. Like whenever I get stuck or I feel lost or I need some insight or healing or just human connection, I have a beautiful group of people, team around me, the ones that work for me and the ones that are friends and family. And then I'm very grateful that I get to be part of other people's teams, like the kids in Nepal, the folks in Ukraine, the people that work for me that I get to pay and they can pay for their lives. When I first started running my own quote unquote business, I guess, I always thought it was like this top down thing where this is mine, I'm in charge. And then I realized, it's the network and we're all depending on each other. I would have absolutely nothing without everyone. So moving from that hierarchy to more of a kind of a network team mentality has been extremely helpful for me. And so I'm super grateful for everyone on my team and for people letting me be on their team, whether they listen to my meditations or they're physically around me. Just that whole dynamic of being a human being and connecting. My worst nightmare would be to be completely isolated, alone forever. I think as human beings, we probably all want connection. So at this moment, very grateful for all of that connection.
That's awesome. We sure do. We'll call it the power of team.
Yes.
Power of now and power of the team. It's true.
Sometimes you're the CEO in the boardroom, and sometimes you're somebody else's treasurer. Don't spend that money. And sometimes you're their therapist and their healer, their friend, their guide. All of the above. So let yourself play all the different roles and accept the other people in your life who need to play roles for you. And then the same with the 7 energies, of the soul. Let yourself be the lover and the healer and the artist at any given moment. And I think you're going to find a richness that maybe you're partially missing.
Beautiful. Thank you. So finally, I encourage all listeners to check out your new book, buy it, check it out at the library, wherever you want to find it, Kindle it. And where can listeners also find you, David? What do you want to share with them?
There's a lot of places because I'm an excessive creator for sure. So you can download the Meditation School app or go to the website, meditationschool.us. That'll kind of lead you to all the podcasts and everything. And then the other place that most people find me is on the Insight Timer meditation app. If you just type in David, I'll pop up. And that's actually the most used meditation app in the world. So if most people already have that one and they don't even know it. So, I think one of those 2 spots is probably the easiest way. Yeah.
Here, I'm showing you, even though they can't hear us, but do you see the little, where's Insight Timer?
Yeah, you've got meditation app next to Insight Timer. Yeah.
Yes. You have changed my life.
So sweet.
Yeah, this is fabulous. I love seeing them on my phone next to each other. Meditation Schools next to Insight Timer, which I will say they are absolutely my 2 favorite apps. So,
so sweet.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. And I would love to have you back sometime.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for taking the time to join me and listen to this episode. Listeners can find more information and also subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast at www.ccphp.net/SENS/podcast. That's www.ccphp.net/sens/podcast. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. We are a concierge medicine organization that partners with exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled healthcare experience while also empowering our members to achieve their optimal well-being. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.